what's really important is to make a decision and act. Hi, my name is Saul Kornik. I'm located in Johannesburg in South Africa. I am the CEO and one of the founders of Africa Health Placements in South Africa, and actually in Africa as a whole. The biggest problem with healthcare delivery is a shortage of skills. I think Africa has 25% of the global disease burden, but only 2% of the world's physicians. In South Africa, in our rural areas, it's no better off than any other African country. So the organisation that I run essentially tries to address that. I like the way you say, not just a tough choice in terms of how it got me to where I am now, but also how it has guided future decisions that I've made. And I really do believe in, I suppose one way of looking at it is habits, another way of looking at it is culture, a way of doing things. So it's very important at the start to do things in an appropriate way, or to make decisions in a particular kind of way if you want to create the habits or the culture of doing things in that way going forward. I've had to make lots of decisions throughout my life. In fact, I make so many decisions that I sometimes joke that I get decision fatigue. There was one particular decision that I remember making. At the time, I remember thinking that making this decision was going to influence the future decisions I made. At the time, I was actually working for, don't tell anyone, for a big investment bank in London. I had the option, I had an option to move out of the bank to start a hedge fund type business, which would have taken me around the world with the founder of the business to Sao Paulo, to Tokyo, to Geneva, in setting up this business and structuring it. And this seemed like a good opportunity and a natural progression given the finance background I had and the work I had done up until that point. At the same time, a friend of mine from university called me up and said, "You remember at university we said we were going to sail around Africa? Well, now's the time to go and do that. Let's go and sail around Africa." And I said, "Well, we don't have any money. How are we going to do this?" So he said, "No worries, we'll go and buy an old wooden jahazi, a dhow in Tanzania, and we'll just sail on that thing." So I was presented with these two options, and I spoke to lots of people about which route to go. And some people said no, some of my friends said no, you must play the game. Life's a game, play the game in the business. You'll still get to travel around the world, go and start this business, it's good for your progress of your career. And the next day I was planning to go to work and accept this other job. And I was speaking to my father on the phone. And he was telling me about how when he was young he'd gone traveling, and when he didn't actually know the decision I was trying to make out of interest. He remembered when he was flying back into South Africa and he saw the brown grasses of Johannesburg, he realized that he'd come back too early and he'd made a mistake. And there was something in that story that just resonated with me, this idea of doing what you feel is right and not necessarily what you think is right. And at the end of the day, I would prefer to see rural islands off the coast of East Africa than I would to see Tokyo or Geneva. And so in that moment, I changed my mind, and the next day I went to work, I quit my job at the bank, and I booked a ticket to go and a couple of other people, and we went sailing for 6 months. But I think that habit of making those decisions based on an inner set of values, not based on what is an appropriate path as defined by others, is a habit that I'm trying to keep up. I've got many weaknesses, but one of my strengths is the ability to follow through and not be scared of the hard work that it will take. And I think that's, when I think back on that decision, for example, I don't think it was particularly difficult once I'd realized on what basis I needed to make the decision. And I was willing to do the hard work that I think it was going to require in terms of moving my life and what it meant for my career afterwards, and the hard work that I would need to do to kind of redefine the direction I was going to go, given the opportunity that I'd given up as well. My position is one where I have to make decisions all day, every day. We don't dilly-dally, we don't get analysis paralysis. We look at the information and we make a decision and then we go ahead. It doesn't mean that we don't think about things before we act. It doesn't mean we don't plan before we act. It doesn't mean we don't have the flexibility to adjust our plans when something unforeseen happens. But I think what's really important is to make a decision and act. And so yes, that kind of decision making, I think it's improved. Hopefully I think more before I act now. Hopefully I plan better before I implement. But certainly for example at HP, I always try and come back to what our vision is that we have, that we hold for healthcare on the continent, what the values are that we hold dear, the things that drive us to do the things we do, and how those values are lived in terms of behaviors on a daily basis. And if I can come back to those guiding principles, it helps me to make decisions that are for the benefit of what we're doing, not necessarily the benefit for the donors or for what the world thinks we should be doing, and allows us to be creative in the process.
Wow.